Warning, we are not your attorneys. Please, don't take anything we say as legal advice. I'm Geoff.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Derrick.
And you are listening to the Not So Grand Jury,
which is now sponsored by Morwa P. LLC.
This episode, we're talking about In the Heat of the Night. Okay, 1967's In the Heat of the Night examines race in the 1960s through the eyes of Officer Virgil Tibbs, a Philadelphia PD detective, and Chief Bill Gillespie of the Sparta, Mississippi Police. Virgil, portrayed brilliantly by the late, great Sidney Poitier, is arrested while waiting for a train one night in Sparta. The wealthiest man in town has just been found dead, and Virgil had the misfortune of being a black man out at night by himself with money in his pocket in the South in the 60s. Several civil rights violations later, he's ordered by his boss back in Philly to assist the local police with their murder investigation, seeing as he's their best murder detective.
I do love a summary that has several civil rights violations later in the summary. That's always great. It's a good start to the movie.
The plot was pretty convoluted. Like the movie has it goes all over the place.
It does. There's some levels to the mystery.
If it were a worse movie, I would have real issues with how convoluted it were.
So, and I say several civil rights violations later. This was 1967. A lot of what we think of as civil rights in terms of searches and seizures and police interactions with people happened after this, and we're going to get to that. But let's start with the civil rights aspects. And this is, of course, in the South in the 1960s. There was segregation at the time. And Virgil, Sidney Poitier's character, is waiting at the train station to get the train He's waiting to change trains to head back to Philly after visiting his mother. He's sitting alone in the train station, and Officer Wood has been ordered to search for suspicious characters, including at the train station. And Wood sees him sitting there.
On your feet, boy. I mean now.
He orders Virgil to stand up in a nice racist way that I'm not going to repeat. Virgil does as he's instructed, and as Wood approaches, he reaches for his suit jacket. Presumably, we as the audience don't yet know this, and Wood doesn't know this, but his badge is in his jacket pocket. So presumably he's reaching for his suit jacket in order to identify himself to this other police officer.
Fun fact, Geoff, you just made me learn that because I didn't even pick that up when I first watched it. So I actually like this. I'm learning things about the movie I watched for this show. So that's good.
Oh, I've seen this movie a lot. And I think this might be as good a place as any to mention it. You two have not seen this movie before.
Nope. No, this is my first watch. But yeah, I think this leads to one of those interesting things, like similar to when with the Lincoln Lawyer, where I had watched it multiple times and you guys had either just watched it or only watched it once or twice. We have a situation where Mike and I are seeing this for the first time and Geoff is having a 20th rewatch or whatever it is you're doing, which will lead to interesting commentary, I think, because Lord knows I have not thought through many of these things, and I'm guessing you may have.
Sure. And this is the first time I've thought about this scene in such detail, treating it like a law school exam, because it very much if you write down what happens, which I did for this, it very much reads like a criminal procedure exam question in law school. So Virgil, like I said, he reaches for his suit jacket. Wood draws his firearm and directs Virgil to turn around and place his hands on the wall.
Get them hands high. You spread them fingers, I want to count all 10. And you move before I tell you to, boy. By God, I'm gonna leave the plow. That's pretty fat already, boy. Huh? Now outside there's a police car. You're gonna pick up that bag. You're gonna walk out. You're gonna plant yourself in the back. And you're gonna be a real nice, quiet boy all the way in. You hear?
Wood searches Virgil's pockets and finds his wallet, in which he finds, for the time, I guess, fairly substantial amount of cash for someone to be carrying around. And then promptly takes Virgil to the station. Now, in modern parlance, this is what we would call a Terry stop, or a stop and frisk. That's what it has been most known as, especially in New York under the NYPD. They've had quite a bit of controversy surrounding their stop and frisk policy. All of this comes from a case, Terry v. Ohio, which actually wasn't decided until the year after this movie came out. That case established that a Terry stop, or a stop and frisk, within certain boundaries, is constitutional. The court summarized this. Well, a little background on Terry v. Ohio. An officer witnessed 3 gentlemen behaving in a very suspicious way in an area where there had been a number of break-ins. Essentially, there were 2 guys standing on a street corner. One of them would walk up the block, look in a particular store window, continue on to the end of the block, turn around, come back. Then the other guy would walk down the block, stop, look in the business window, then go to the end of the block, turn around, and come back. They're then joined by a 4th guy, or a 3rd guy. After this had looped several times, the officer decided, okay, I'm going to intervene here. He stopped all 3 of them and patted them down for weapons, found weapons on 2 of them. I think actually the third guy, after a little bit, had left the block. And then after I think one more round of basically casing the joint, the 2 other gentlemen followed him. And it was at that point that he stopped all 3 of them. Found weapons on 2 of them. They challenged this in court as a search of their person. That is a search under the 4th Amendment. The question is that a permissible search? And the court said that what the officer in this situation had done, patting down the outside of the men's clothes to find weapons, found weapons, didn't confiscate, wallets or anything like that, was legitimate. And they summarized it by saying, when an officer is justified in believing that the individual whose suspicious behavior he is investigating at close range is armed and presently dangerous to the officer or to others, it would appear to be clearly unreasonable to deny the officer the power to take necessary measures to determine whether the person is in fact carrying a weapon and to neutralize the threat of physical harm. And they go on in some detail. I have some lengthy quotes here that I won't bother reading too much of. But they go on to say, he did essentially the minimum to ensure his own safety. He only patted down the outside of their clothes. He didn't reach into their pockets. And though he may have felt other things in their pockets, the only thing he confiscated or cared about was disarming them. And I'll caveat that the string of robberies had been armed robberies, which is why he suspected they were armed. I hope I'm remembering that detail right. So let's take a look at these facts from Terry and apply it to Virgil in this instance. Perfectly reasonable. I don't want to say perfectly reasonable. It is permissible for Wood to stop. He was already stopped, but for Wood to ask Virgil to identify himself, say why he's there. He has no reason to think that Virgil is armed. The murder that's just happened was not a gunshot wound. He was bludgeoned in the head. So even if he thought, or presuming he thought that this was the guy who did the crime, he didn't do it with a firearm. He did it with something else. Now, maybe that's something else he has in his pockets. But at least under Terry, as things stood in 1968, I questioned whether he could search Virgil at all. He certainly went too far when he, in patting him down, takes out his wallet, rifles through the cash and whatever else was in his wallet, and confiscates his wallet. That's not permissible. Nor is doing all of this with your gun drawn. At that point, the cop has escalated things beyond where it should be.
So, Geoff, let me ask the question, which is, do we know pre-Terry was this normal?
That's an excellent question. I presume this was fair. I would presume, especially in this setting, that this was a normal interaction.
Pre a lot of civil rights litigation, yeah.
Right. And I think after Terry, this is pretty normal interaction. I mean, even to this day, this is a pretty standard interaction.
I saw in New York when I lived there, I saw lots of situations where this seemed to have been happening. And granted, maybe I didn't have the backstory and the police had more information, but there seemed to be times where the police were just like, nope, ask questions later. And obviously now we're starting to get to the point where body cam footage and pedestrians taking videos are starting to, if not starting, actively changing this, but that obviously was not the case in the 60s and 70s and 80s.
And we just saw an example of this last week with I am not a big football fan, so I don't have his name immediately at the ready. But
Terry Kill. Yes.
Yeah. This is a star Dolphins player who was driving to the stadium for a game, and from the footage seemed to be driving faster than the other cars. But he's pulled over, and within, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds, he's being pulled from the car, thrown to the ground, knee on his back. They're cuffing him. He had presented them with his ID at their request. He gets pulled out of the car because he doesn't roll down his window, essentially, as it seems, as far as the cop wanted him to. Anyway, he has grounds for a lawsuit. To my understanding, he is pursuing a lawsuit right now, and the officer who was at least involved in pulling him out of the vehicle has been put on administrative leave. Anyway, so that was a very recent crossing of the line that we all got to see. And unfortunately, this has gotten even more. Terry v. Ohio lays out a pretty straightforward standard for whether or not this a stop and a search of a person is permissible, and the Supreme Court and the lower courts since have proceeded to make all sort of additional special circumstances and things that carve away at someone's protection when they're just sitting at the train station or walking down the street or driving to practice. And it's very frustrating. But my read of this at the time under Terry is that Wood has violated his Virgil's Fourth Amendment rights by doing this. He's also now another interesting question of timing. This movie came out in 1967. It was being filmed. There wasn't so much post-production back in the day. It was being filmed in 1966, maybe a little bit in 1967. I don't know the exact dates. But Miranda v. Arizona, the case that gave us the cliche, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in no court of law. All that recitation from police was laid out in 1966. Wood doesn't Mirandize Virgil ever, which is a separate problem to the illegal search. They don't really interrogate him. Well,
they really do much. They don't really do much. They ask a lot of questions. Like, they don't really... Before he gets to the police station, it's just assumed he's the guy.
Right.
Because he has money in his wallet. And they just... Why would a black guy have money?
So we've had we've had more than one of these where... It's always Geoff movies. He picks a movie that happens right as Miranda is being decided. And if I remember this right... Miranda was decided, and then sometime later, police started getting those little Miranda cards and actually started reading the recitation. Am I wrong there?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how quick adoption of Miranda was, but we saw it I think we talked about it in Shawshank, which was your movie, Mike. Don't put that on me.
Columbo.
Columbo. That's true. I hadn't thought about Columbo.
It was a much bigger deal in Columbo, for the record.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's interesting that in Shawshank, we actually see one of the officers with the little card, Mirandizing the warden, or I guess it's Officer
I
Warden.
wonder if I could find one of those as like some antique shop or something. That would be a cool little souvenir, like an original Miranda card.
That would be interesting. Yeah, I'm sure they're floating around. So he's not Mirandized. If there was a custodial interrogation that Virgil wanted to challenge, and he didn't end up getting deputized into the Sparta PD for briefly, there probably would have been some cause of action there. The sheriff does briefly ask him some questions. Where were you heading? That kind of thing, which is a custodial interrogation.
Got a name, boy?
Virgil Tibbs.
Virgil. Well, I don't think we're gonna have any trouble, are we, Virgil?
No trouble at all.
What'd you hit him with?
Hit whom?
Whom? Whom? What are you? You a northern boy? What's a northern boy like you doing all the way down here?
I was waiting for the train.
But now there ain't no trains this time of morning.
Tuesdays only, 4:05 to Memphis.
You say. All right, you say right. All right. Virgil. Oh! Now look. I try to run a nice, clean, safe town here. A town where a man can sneeze and not get his brains beat out. You follow me?
Yes.
Why don't you tell me how you killed Mr. Colbert, and I promise you you're gonna feel a whole lot better.
I was visiting my mother. I came in on the 12:35 from Brownsville. I was waiting to go out on the 4:05.
In the meanwhile, you just killed yourself a white man, just about the most important white man we got around here, and picked yourself up $200.
I earned that money 10 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Colored can't earn that kind of money, boy. Hell, that's more than I make in a month. Now, where did you earn it?
Philadelphia,
Mississippi?
Pennsylvania.
Just what you do up there in little old Pennsylvania, earn that kind of money?
I'm a police officer.
Oh, yeah. What? Yeah. Did you question this man before you brought him in?
No, sir.
Do you mind taking a look at that? Yeah! Oh, yeah! All right, I'll check on this wise city boy from Philadelphia. You take him outside and hold him.
Yes, sir.
I mean, my favorite part is when the chief says to Wood, "Did you ask him questions?" And he basically was like, "No."
Nope.
And he's like, "Okay, could you go do something else? Like, deal with the oil that I asked about a week ago that has nothing to do with the situation because I don't want you in this room right now." Like, it's. And here's the thing: is I 100% believe that is something that seriously could have happened in a town of Sparta in Mississippi in the 60s.
Yeah.
Like, you felt like it was 100% something that could have happened.
Yeah. And I do like, so it's not emphasized much in the movie, but in the movie, the sheriff is also new to town. He has not had the job very long. There's a couple of conversations with the mayor that kind of touch on this.
Boy, I mean, I come into this world out of luck. Here's the first good thing to come my way, and I pick it up. But when I see whose wallet it is, I mean, I start to sweat. But I heard about this new chief, this Gillespie. Got no more smile than a turnip.
And we don't know where he's from, but as soon as Virgil is like, "I'm a police officer, you asshole," and he looks at his identification, he doesn't hesitate before calling Wood in and going like, "What the hell? You didn't even bother to, like, you took this guy in, but you didn't."
You somehow got his wallet, but you missed his badge? Like, how could that have possibly happened?
But that's because his badge was in his jacket. Wood never did anything with his jacket.
Well, that's just shoddy police work right there. I mean, geez.
Yeah. Shocking from the police in this movie. Beyond the civil rights aspects of things, related to the civil rights aspects of things, but not a legal question, I wanted to touch on the fact that Sidney Poitier was adamant that he would do the movie, but they initially wanted to film on location in the South. I think they wanted to go to Tennessee, if I remember right. And he was like, "No, I am not filming a movie south of the Mason-Dixon line. That's just not going to happen." So they ended up filming Sparta. There is a town in southern Illinois called Sparta that they kept all the signage, but just changed it to Mississippi. There is no Sparta, Mississippi. And I guess I should mention, I believe this is all adapted from a book. And the book is set in some small town in Mississippi with a different name. But understandably, Sidney Poitier did not want to film in the South because even when, because the movie is fairly true to life and how certain people in the South, a sizable number of people in the South, would have responded to that. There was one scene that they shot that was across the river in, I don't know if it's Arkansas or Tennessee, but they had to, there was one instance where they spent a night in a motel in, on location in the South somewhere. And forgive me, I don't have the details right in front of me.
In fact, there is actually, if you look at the errors of the movie, there is one part of the movie where Arkansas plates are noticed, or something involving Arkansas is noticed as an error in the movie. And it's the one time they shot away from Illinois.
Yeah. and some southern folks got wind of them filming this movie, and there was kind of a posse that was apparently like wandering around the motel trying to figure out where the filmmakers were, and the director calls from his room to Sidney Poitier's room, is like, "Hey, be aware this is going on. We're trying to get it taken care of." And Sidney Poitier tells him, essentially, "Fuck that. I'll tell you right now, the first person to come through this door is going to get shot by me because I'm not taking any chances." Luckily, thankfully, obviously, that didn't go anywhere.
That would have gotten weird if half the movie was filmed and then Poitier was in jail for murder. That would have gotten very weird.
It would have made it more
very quick. It would have gone from a Academy Award Best Picture to a pretty interesting documentary very quickly.
Yeah. So I think that's me having been talking for about 25 minutes or 20 minutes or so. So I want to pass it off to you guys. Let's see, Derrick, you wanted to talk.
I was going to say, let's have Mike go first because he actually is talking about the movie itself. I start going off on some legal nerding, so I can do that separate.
So, in the movie, obviously, when they discover that Sidney Poitier, Tibbs is a police officer and he's the best homicide detective in Philadelphia, and they're investigating a homicide. They request his help. What authority does he have there?
Hello? Yes, sir. I'm sorry to have gotten you involved in this. I really had no choice. Yes. You can't be serious, sir. I mean, even if I could be of some help, they wouldn't want it. No, sir, I'm not prejudiced. Yes, sir, I'm a police officer, and they're police officers, but... Hello, this is Gillespie. Yes, sir, yep, well...
You don't say. He's your #1 homicide expert. Well, my.
Well, I don't think we need any help, though. I think we can wrap this thing up ourselves. Yes, sir. But I do want to thank you for offering me such a powerful piece of manpower as Virgil Tibbs. Yes, sir, thank you. Yeah, goodbye now. Oh, it's all there. We paid for the phone call ourselves.
Well, now, you were the #1 homicide expert.
That's right.
Boy, I bet you get to look at a lot of dead bodies, don't you?
Lots.
Well?
Well, what?
Well, no, I just thought maybe you wouldn't mind taking a look at this one.
No, thanks.
Well, why not, expert?
Because I've got a train to catch.
Oh, wait a minute. That train don't leave till 12 o'clock noon. Look, they pay you $162.39 a week just to look at bodies. Why can't you look at this one?
Why can't you look at it for yourself?
Because I'm not an expert. Officer.
And mostly, like, the long and short of it is he doesn't have any authority there. He's just a civilian helping them out. There are questions about where does a police officer's jurisdiction end, and where did I start writing this down? So generally, the jurisdiction of police officers is typically limited to the geographic area or region in which they are employed or authorized to use force. This could be, local police in the city or town that they're in, county sheriffs, county-wide, state police, probably a statewide jurisdiction, and then federal officers could have nationwide jurisdiction. There are exceptions to that if they're in hot pursuit, and in this case, the exception would be requests from another jurisdiction. Now, normally, and I can pull up like the Pennsylvania. Where did that go? So Pennsylvania had, just because Jeff and I live in Pennsylvania, mutual aid agreement between all municipalities with police departments is section 32.01 of the Pennsylvania Code. Most states have some version of this authorizing that, like, the city police of Philadelphia, if they're called, they hear there's something going on in Bucks County, they can run out there. If it's the neighboring county, there is some overlap that the state allows for people to run around and do that. I don't think that would. I don't know if this existed in 1966. This movie was filmed.
60.
Yeah, 67.
That's when it was filmed. Yeah.
And I also don't think it would have, like, in the Pennsylvania Code, it spells out the jurisdictions it applies to. I don't think it includes random parts of Mississippi. So I think that may have been an issue, and that it also raises the question of, like, what would have happened if someone tried to sue the police? Well, they would have to deal with qualified immunity. If they were trying to just sue Tibbs, I don't think they would have had to deal with those issues. I think that it creates some liability issues. I don't think there's anything in the movie that would have resulted in that, because there's no point that he's arresting somebody. It's the police officers around him are doing the work. And, like, the only time that, like, he kind of gets into a fight, it's like people obviously jumped him. So it's nothing happened that would have raised this issue, but it could have been an issue where, like, if he shot someone in self-defense, like, it's one thing if a police officer shoots some criminal. It's another thing if a random individual does. So create some issues.
Yeah, he's not executing any search warrants or anything. His handling of the evidence, though, his, like, I'm not going to give you this evidence. I'm going to send it to the FBI.
Well, you're pretty sure of yourself, ain't you, Virgil? Virgil, that's a funny name for a boy that comes from Philadelphia. What do they call you up there?
They call me Mr. Tibbs.
Mr. Tibbs! Well, Mr. Wood, take Mr. Tibbs, take him down to the depot, and I mean boy like now.
I'll have the FBI lab send you the report on this. Not that it'll make any difference.
I'll take that.
Oh, you won't. I'm sending it in, personally.
My God. What kind of people are you? What kind of a place is this? My husband is dead. Somebody in this town killed him. I want you to find out who.
One of my complaints about this movie is, what is the trope of the intelligent character not revealing everything that they know? Because every couple stages he's like, oh, don't worry about that. And it's like, why don't you just tell us what you know? Why don't you just, like, tell us?
There was a lot of Poitier being like, just give me till tomorrow. Yeah. Just give me to the morning. Just give me whatever. And I'm like, what does he know that he's not telling us? And the first couple times, he doesn't know much, it turns out. Like,
but occasionally he does know something. And it's like, oh, you could have just said that earlier. Like, when they arrest the wrong guy because he didn't tell them that he knew about the affair, or that the police officer was sleeping with a 16-year-old girl. It's like, I don't know, if you had revealed what you knew, they wouldn't have arrested this guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Now we grinding corn.
Hey, George, you should have been there. I want to tell you, man, flip them old radios. We sure lost him going over that bridge.
Yeah, that old boy have all that freight train like to cut us off.
Yeah. And old Charlie's hound dog got loose about right that time, and he would have chased him off up the hill, huh?
The man you arrested, did he confess?
Well, I believe he will. Yes, sir. I believe he will. I believe he will.
He's left-handed, isn't he?
How do I know?
Well, he seemed left-handed to me.
I believe Harvey is a southpaw. Now, ain't he, Shagbag?
What if he is? What's that make him?
Innocent.
And I guess one interesting question for you, Mike, and maybe you're about to get into this, is like, we see a lot of TV shows where, like, there are jurisdictions helping each other out.
Yep.
Like Criminal Minds, Numbers, Blue Bloods, SWAT, they all have scenarios where, like, someone goes somewhere else and then they're brought into the investigation. Like, is it different with the FBI? Like, how does that work if you've actually looked into it?
The FBI has national jurisdiction, and that's part of why they were established. Is there were a bunch of bank robbers going around robbing different banks in different states, and they would cross the river, and suddenly the local police couldn't go after them. So having the FBI or organization like that can operate nationwide helps. And also, police stations can request information. In this case, like having an expert come in to investigate, or like the fact that he's doing the autopsy and is better at it than the actual guy in the morgue. Like, you could see them calling in an expert who's like, oh, he's very familiar with dead bodies in this situation.
I'll need a few things.
Such as?
Ammonium hydrosulfide, benzidine, superoxide of hydrogen, copper powder, distilled water, a 6-inch celluloid scale, thermometer, some tweezers, calipers, and some toothpicks.
Toothpicks? What's going on here, Chief? Who is this boy, anyway?
I asked him to look at the body. That's who he is.
So if he's doing that, that would be fine. I do wonder, I guess if he's questioned it, if he's called in to testify about the murder, it would be the same thing as any other police officer called in to testify. I guess on cross they might press him on why he was there, and it might lead to a convoluted story. One of my notes while watching the movie is Tibbs is on the longest vacation ever. It just kept getting extended over and over again.
Well, at least once he, if not multiple times, he says, "I'm a police officer."
Yeah,
can he just do that in a different state and just be like, "I'm a police officer, so you have to like listen to me"? Like, how does that work?
That's a good way. In those scenes, was he ordering anybody to do anything?
It was. I mean, maybe not ordering him, but he was certainly gathering up. I mean, by the way, I realize this is much before DNA was ever a thing, but like watching him without gloves just start handling evidence is just like, you just are like, oh my God, what are you doing? And with like full knowledge that like that happened, obviously, for forever.
DNA was not known, or was not being used, but fingerprints were.
Correct. So, like, you know, I think when he goes into the car and he just starts touching everything, and you're just like, that seems problematic, especially when you're not even in the jurisdiction.
Isn't that, like imagine you're the defense attorney at the murder trial, and, like, Mr. Tibbs, weren't you previously arrested as a suspect in this murder? Why are your fingerprints all over the car?
In fact, isn't the only reason they put you not as a suspect because they found out you were a police officer, and they were just like, oh, he couldn't have done it.
Yeah, police officers don't kill people.
Right. So, which, by the way, I was going to mention that earlier. Like, it's amazing how quickly they just move on from him as a suspect because they're like, oh, he's a cop in Philly. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yep. And oh, you're so as if I come at this as a defense attorney, there's sort of a conflict in my mind of, okay, do I want to talk about he's a homicide expert because that might give the charges against my clients more credence, but to what Mike you were just saying, so you were a suspect, but as soon as they found out you're a police officer, they dropped you as a suspect, even though you specialize in homicide investigations, and if someone was going to kill somebody, you would know a lot of ways to do it and how to avoid a lot of the pitfalls that come with that.
And now you're testifying here against my clients, like, because we don't have to prove Tibbs did it. We just have to create enough of a doubt and not, like, get one juror to be like, yeah.
Actually, I didn't even think about this, but he's from outside the jurisdiction. The minute they have a guy under arrest, he's gone. He's on the train back to Philly. They have to try this guy. And Tibbs is like the primary witness for everything they did in their investigation.
I mean, he did easily, like, so the guy who did kill him did confess pretty straightforwardly.
Well, that's
true. His Miranda rights.
That's true.
I will say in that situation we're not sure because we actually don't see the full scenario. Like it goes to him like basically being held by Tibbs. So again, does not have the authority to do so. Then flash forward to him being interrogated, and he basically says, "I didn't mean to kill him," which I assume means he pled to something and got 25 years. But what do I know?
That night when I left her house, I was going to the diner. And Mr. Colbert drove by, so I hitched a ride to it, and that's all. I said I sure would like a job in that new factory once you get started. And he said, sure. And I said, well, I wonder what it was going to be. He said, well, that field we were coming to right up ahead was it, and he was going to stop and show me. I said to myself, man, he's asking for it. I said, now, Ralph, all you got to do when we get out, just sneak up behind him, and you just tap him. And then just claim that somebody jumped us from the bushes. That's all. I didn't mean to kill him.
Yeah, who knows? I wasn't thinking about the fact that there's
and I don't think we don't find anything out in the two sequels. I don't think they mention this at all, do they?
No. Well, I've only seen the first sequel.
They Call Me Mr. Tibbs. Yeah. Weirdly, I had seen They Call Me Mr. Tibbs and not the original. So
what about the TV show?
That is
about what I watched.
The real fans are into the TV show.
I never saw the show.
No.
I should probably watch it. But.
So I didn't know. Lion King came out when I was like 7 years old. I was a month ago, like I went with 30 years of my life without realizing They Call Me Mr. Pig was from this movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, who's the pig? Are you talking to me?
Uh-oh, they called him a pig.
Are you talking to me?
Shouldn't have done that.
Are you talking to me?
Now they're in for it.
They call me Mr. Pig! Ah!
I honestly, I don't think I realized it for a while either. Like, and by the way, good for Disney for being able to put some of this stuff in and having us adults even not understanding it at first until we, they do a very good job, just for the record.
Some of the time.
Well,
I mean,
listen, we all have misses. It's fine. Well, and I was going to say, Mike, one of the sort of, and I have this on my potential list to watch for us to talk about in a future episode, is like a good example of like a completely random, like, how are they allowed to do this? Is I've watched the TV show SWAT pretty regularly, and in one of the seasons they go to Thailand, and like it's supposed to be like an information sharing exercise where like LAPD SWAT goes to Thailand and they show them like some of the cool things they're doing in Thailand. And it ends up being like some of LAPD SWAT go in and to like save one of their own in Thailand who has gotten mixed up in this like sort of drug kingpin thing. And like the Thailand chief of police or chief of SWAT or whatever just deputizes the LAPD SWAT to be police officers there.
Please, I need you to find them.
I know. But Michelle, Tan and I don't have jurisdiction here.
You do now. I'm deputizing you two. You're now members of the Thai SWAT team. What is it that you say? Let's roll.
And I'm just like so curious as to if that's even remotely humanly possible.
I mean, we have no idea what the laws are in Thailand. None of us are experts in
that.
Well,
that's true.
I might look this up and do my own little personal sidebar because I watched it and my legal brain couldn't turn off when this was happening.
I do not know what the regulations would be for Thailand. And like in theory, what allows any police officer to do what they're doing is like, the sovereign giving them that power. So in theory, the state of Mississippi could give Tibbs whatever powers he needs to do his job. My issue is, at no point in the movie is there anything done to give him any legal authority. Now, he could just be there as an advisor, and like most of what he does seems to be fine. Like he's not arresting anyone himself. He's not, in a shootout. He's not like when he's questioning somebody, it's with another police officer present.
But he definitely does some questioning without him, right? Like when he goes to the abortionist and things like that, right?
A man's name. First name, last name. The man who's paying you for Dolores Purdy's abortion.
You're the boy who works for Mr. Charlie. I thought that's who you was. Why you want to do that? Why you want to help the police like that? They stealing your soul. They chew you up and spit you out.
I'm not here to lay a finger on you, Mama. It's the white boy I want.
What you got against him? He's paying for his fun.
How much? I bet he's not paying you more than $100. You know how much he's got in his pocket right now? More than $600.
That cracker? Where'd he come off getting 600?
He killed Mr. Colbert.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But also, like, it doesn't seem like he's doing anything that he can't just ask questions about. You can go and ask questions somewhere and then later tell the chief of police what happened.
Can you?
Well, that's what most journalists. Well,
yeah,
not most.
That's there would be the issue if he were somehow violating somebody else's rights in a way that the police are not allowed to do. But it doesn't seem like he did. It's not like he did an illegal search that the police couldn't do just so they could get away with it.
But then, so I guess here comes the question. If this actually was to go to a trial, he would have to come back and testify to all
yes,
this.
to anything that there wasn't a direct witness to, who also, and like,
right.
You know, if somebody else, yeah, he would probably be the best witness.
Right.
For just
I mean, he's the one who establishes time of death.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's 4:45. What time was this man killed?
Well, Sam Wood found him on the street about 3 a.m. The doctor here says it's possible he was killed an hour earlier.
At 2?
Maybe a little later. 2:15. 2:30?
Would you feel the face and jaw, please? Am I mistaken, or has rigor begun?
Yes.
You'll notice, too, that postmortem lividity is present here in the lower portion, so the time of death really has to be earlier, wouldn't you say?
Oh.
Well, we'll be able to pinpoint that as soon as I get a thermometer. As you know, the loss of heat from the brain is the most reliable way of determining time of death. Right, Chief?
Oh, yeah.
Well, which one of you gentlemen will assist me?
Man, like, if he doesn't come back, the defense attorney actually has, like, calls up the original mortician, like, so didn't you describe the time of death as this time?
Right. And then he has to say, some black dude from Philly told me otherwise, and I agreed with him.
This is, like, a surprisingly hard case to try if you're the prosecutor. Like, even if Tibbs does come down, like, I don't know who's going to be in the jury in this case, but it's like, you bring the original mortician up. Didn't you originally disagree with this person who is not a mortician,
Right, and it's his determination of time of death that ruled out him as a suspect? Interesting, okay.
Yeah, it keeps going back to Tibbs. Like, everything Tibbs did made it less likely that he was the suspect.
The alternate version of this movie is like, they just show every scene that we don't see, and it's like, oh, he did commit the murder? He just cut, like, an elaborate ruse to cover everything up.
To Tibbs's credit, the reason that everything he does points to someone else doing it is he's doing an investigation and someone else did it. So.
That's what we think from what we saw, yes.
Yeah, we saw the guy pretty much confess, and we've established
that would have been the ultimate, like, last scene, is that we find out the whole thing was a right.
He's actually Kaiser
right.
Soze.
It's a Thomas Crown
one
affair.
Guy to take the fall, like
that'd be fantastic. Hi everyone, Derrick here with a brief message. The Not So Grand Jury is sponsored by my law firm, Morwa PLLC. One of Morwa PLC's many practice areas is business law. If you are a business owner or someone who is thinking of starting up a new or side business, you need a legal team who can efficiently provide you legal counsel, keeping you and your business away from potential legal issues, and if necessary, representing you in any disputes that do arise. We pride ourselves on being cost efficient while also getting to know our clients. If you want less stress and more support, you need more law. If you would like to set up a free consult, please click on the link in the show notes, visit our website, www.mooreatty.com, that's mooreatty.com, or email us at contact@mooreatty.com. And now, back to the show.
All right, Derrick, you want to take over?
Yeah, sure. So what I ended up doing after watching the movie for the first time was sort of like really look like I'm sure I'm not the only person who was like after watching the movie was sort of taken aback by just like how straightforward the racism was in the movie, like just how bigoted the chief of police Gillespie was, and even like and I'm gonna get to in a second, like just like how Sidney Poitier's character Tibbs like just wanted to go after the racist white guy. Like that's really like you can tell like he wanted to find a way, even though he's a Philadelphia like homicide expert who I'm sure has dealt with like, you can tell he's very intelligent. He knows what he's talking about. He wanted to find a way to pin it on that guy, even though I don't think he was actively like thinking what he was doing was wrong. He just assumed it's got to be that guy, right? Like. How could it not be?
Right. The other rich guy in town.
Really good.
He found Fern Root in his car.
You better damn well clear out, and I mean fast.
What about that big speech you gave me this morning?
I didn't know you were going to slap any white man, least of all Endicott.
All right, give me another day. 2 days, I'm close. I can pull that fat cat down. I can bring him right off this hill.
Right. Right. Like he's got evidence that he did not at all take care of in any good capacity other than putting it in a napkin and putting it in his own pocket, as I recall. But
Mr. Tibbs, why are the fibers from your coat all over this?
Well, it was in my coat for the last 2 years until I came down to testify. Is that a problem? Anyway, so I started looking. So first off, I think one thing I wanted to note was that very interesting about Sidney Poitier is that, like, in 1967, he was busy. Like, he starred in 3 films that all really hit on, like, the, all had racial undertones. Like, In the Heat of the Night, To Serve with Love, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Now, each of the other 2 movies, both were a little less in your face. Like, To Serve with Love is deals with the social and racial issues in, like, an inner city school. Poitier plays a school teacher. There's a couple scenes where they really get into it, but like he's an engineer, a failed engineer basically that becomes a temporary school teacher.
Isn't it?
As I recall,
isn't it an English school?
It's either in London or somewhere. Yes, in England. Yeah.
Okay.
But like it doesn't hit it nearly as head on. Like it's not like you get bigoted people. There's just like certain parts of the movie where like, as I recall, like they're not willing to go to the colored person's house, as they call it, because they didn't want it. Like the kids didn't want the rest of the white people to like judge them. Like there were certain like aspects of the movie that sort of hit on it, but it's not the whole movie in your face. Similar with like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, that deals with interracial marriage, which is really interesting in terms of the timing, because that came out in the same. I think it actually came out 6 months after Loving v. Virginia came out, which for those of you who are not Supreme Court aficionados, which why would you be? So Loving v. Virginia was when the Supreme Court made the decision that interracial marriage, any statute that prohibited interracial marriage, was unconstitutional. And I did a very deep dive into the Loving v. Virginia case. So if you are a legal nerd, you're about to get some nerdum going here, because I did a real deep dive and got really excited about this. So the background, I'm going to go really into the Loving case, because I think it explains a lot about, like, not only just, like, where, like, what Mississippi would have been like back in the 60s, but just where, like, anywhere was. Like, the Loving case involved Virginia, which, like, literally across the border from D.C., where it was, interracial marriage had been legal for a fair amount of time, as I recall. But the Loving case backstory is in 1958, 2 residents of Virginia, Mildred Jeter, black woman, Richard Loving, white man, they got married in D.C., they went to Virginia, they were charged with violating the state's miscegenation statute, in other words, banning interracial marriages. I didn't know the full backstory. Like, I had read the Supreme Court case in law school, but I didn't actually recall the backstory, which is they pled guilty to the charge.
Mm-hmm.
They were sentenced to a year in jail, but the sentence was suspended if they were to leave Virginia and not return for 25 years, which is a very interesting opinion from the judge. But I guess, like, it's what's written in the opinion that sort of really got me. This is an actual quote from one of the judge's opinions, which is, Almighty God created the races, white, black, yellow, Malay, and red, and he placed them on separate continents. And, but for the interference with his arrangement, there would be no cause for such marriage. The fact that he separated the races shows that he did not intend for the races to mix. That is an actual opinion from that trial court judge, which made it into the Supreme Court decision, but, like, I clearly had... Yeah. That's absolutely bonkers. But I also, like, sort of started nerding out into the actual... And so the decision, it's a unanimous decision. The entire court rules that the interracial marriage statute is unconstitutional. I believe there's one concurring opinion that barely says anything. So it was a 9-0 decision. But I did a little deep dive into this, and one thing that I found interesting was typically Supreme Court decisions, each side is given 30 minutes to argue, sometimes a little bit more if you have, like, you know, a couple different lawyers involved, if there's some cases that combined. I saw that argument lasted over 2 hours, and I was sort of curious about it. There were 2 lawyers for the appellants, and I can't realize why there were 2 different lawyers, but 2 different lawyers for the appellants and a lawyer for an amicus curiae, or a friend of the court. They combined argued for 51 minutes. The assistant AG for Virginia, who had the name that you can't forget, R.D. McIlwain III, argued on behalf of Virginia. He argued for an hour and 14 minutes. They just bashed him, and especially Warren bashed him for an hour and 14 minutes.
Good.
And it got me to sort of... We're going to go off in completely sort of nerding area, so for those of you who don't care about Supreme Court oral arguments, you can fast forward for a little bit. But it got me going into, like, sort of the Supreme Court oral arguments. Like, most oral arguments that I looked up, like, back in the 60s, a lot of them were around an hour, low hours, sometimes not even an hour. There were also multiple times where the court recessed during the middle of an argument and then picked it up a day or 2 later, which, amazing. Imagine you were the other side and you could argue after hearing what the judges had to say.
Yeah.
Like,
you had a full day to think about it. Yeah.
Imagine that. Like, that just sounds unbelievable.
Yeah.
But it started getting me into sort of, like, how long some of these oral arguments last. And for those of you out there who are lawyers or law students, you know that, like, a 5-minute argument can feel like forever. There are some recent Supreme Court arguments that have lasted almost or over 3 hours long. Yeah. And as much as it is a random dream of a lot of lawyers to argue a Supreme Court case, can you imagine being in front of those justices for, even just for your own argument, like an hour and a half? Like, and just... So, like, a good example is the Trump v. U.S. immunity case from the last term. It was 2 hours and 40 minutes, and there was only 2 lawyers. So it was like, that is a very long time. And I was actually talking with Geoff about this before we jumped on. I didn't realize that, and this just shows I haven't been really paying attention to oral arguments in the U.S. Supreme Court. I didn't realize that during COVID, they got rid of the sort of free-for-all strategy where judges just pop in as they wish. During COVID, they started just sort of letting them make an argument, and then each of the judges by seniority would ask their slew of questions. And now that they're out of the, you know, the sort of Zoom or the, you know, or the virtual oral arguments, they're still doing that at the end of arguments now. So there's like a free-for-all, and then if the judges didn't get to ask their questions, they do a slew of questions, which is leading to these ridiculously long arguments. I'm sorry. I argued in front of the New York First Department a few years ago, and I had 6 minutes to argue, and it felt like 60. Like, imagine being in front of the Supreme Court for like an hour and a half. Like, that's gotta feel like days.
Are you saying
Like,
John Roberts doesn't run a good court?
We can get into that another time. and yes. But listen, we can all talk about the Roberts court, and that could be a multi-day podcast. But like, that is I just think at some point it's a diminishing returns thing, right? Like, you are getting so much into the weeds at that point. How are you even able to make the decision? Or it's a way of the judges to force you to say something so that they can make a decision one way or another. But short version, it sounds so. I think we're going to
Sidney Poitier had a busy time.
Yeah.
Right. This is a very long way for me to go from Sidney Poitier had a very busy time in the 60s to how long Supreme Court arguments are to all the way back to the fact that the country was in a very weird state. Yeah. And Sidney Poitier wanted to make it very clear with his acting in 67 and I think for the few years after, like, just he really was willing to hit the sort of the racial tensions of the country head on.
He had just in I think 64 65 gotten Best Actor Oscar for Lilies of the Field.
1964, yeah.
63.
Lilies of the Field was 63. He got it in 64, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I imagine he's thinking, well, somebody's got to address these.
So prior to this, I've watched To Serve with Love, and I watched Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. I had not watched In the Heat of the Night. Now, having watched all three, what's interesting about In the Heat of the Night is that I feel like there's a lot of movies where, and it's become more recent, I think, where like they hit, sort of like racist bigots head on, but they're just always treated as stupid people, like just stupid racists and bigots. Here, like, yeah, Rob Steiger's character is Gillespie, is certainly like playing that redneck sheriff, but like he's sort of an intelligent version of it where like he knows that Poitier can help him out because he does not investigate murders. He could have sent Tibbs out numerous times and sort of tries, but never really like actively pushes him out of the town where he probably should or could have. I think they really sort of portray him as like, yeah, he's a bigot, but like he kind of knows when someone can help him at the right time. And when he found out he was a police officer with homicide experience, like he kind of had that like, this guy can help me even though I'm kind of mad about it. Like, yeah. I don't think that happens a lot with these movies. Like, they're just portrayed as sort of bigoted morons, and that's as far as they go.
I really like the scene between Gillespie and Tibbs where they're at Gillespie's place just sort of having a drink at the end of the night.
Virgil, you are among the chosen few.
How's that?
Well, I think that you're the first human being that's ever been in here.
You can't be too careful, man.
You know a lot of things, don't you? Well, just what do you know about insomnia?
Bourbon can't cure
it. Well, that's for sure. Now look, I got no wife, I got no kids. Boy, I got a town that don't want me.
It's just very interesting to see two very good actors portray these two characters in that situation where Gillespie is fighting with his, I have no frame of reference for like where Gillespie as conceived in the movie falls on the spectrum of like Klan member versus, progressive for the time. let's say, and
Yeah.
and I don't think he's at the progressive for the time end, but he's certainly not at the Klan member side, because we see those characters too, and Gillespie warns him that there are those characters. It's just a really interesting scene to watch.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I also think the Gillespie character. First off, Rod Steiger deserves his Academy Award for Best Actor because it is a very well played character that I think is not easy to play. I don't know much about. I never really had seen anything with him in it before. He doesn't have a Southern accent, but he adopted it for purposes of the movie. He apparently was method so the entire time, so he stayed in character to the entire shooting, even in off days.
Oh, really?
Which is really interesting.
Stayed fully in character or kept the accent on? Because I could see keeping the accent on just to...
My understanding is it was fully in character, even on off days.
That's kind of... I just feel like that would be so off-putting to everyone around you.
Well, I guess when you're to be an Academy Award winning Best Actor, you gotta do what you gotta do.
This is the Daniel Day-Lewis method.
Effectively, 60 years earlier. However, yes. But there's also one random thing that I found when I was doing a deep dive on this is that the director suggested he should chew gum. So he went through something like 250 packs of gum during the course of the filming. And what is actually interesting about that is it makes his pauses that much more important. Because when you're just chewing gum, it's just informal, whatever. The few times he has those big pauses in the movie is almost more important than when he says stuff. Like when Tibbs retaliates with the slap on Endicott, and there's that moment of did you see that, Chief? And he says yes. He goes, what are you going to do about it? And it feels like there's a 9-minute pause when it's actually only 2 or 3 seconds, and he goes, I don't know. That's such a good scene.
We don't want to take any more of your time, Mr. Endicott.
Why'd you two come here? To ask you about Mr. Colbert.
Let me understand this. You two came here to question me?
Well, your attitudes, Mr. Endicott, your points of view are a matter of record. Some people, well, let us say the people who work for Mr. Colbert might reasonably regard you as the person least likely to mourn his passing. We were just trying to clarify some of the evidence. Was Mr. Colbert ever in this greenhouse, say last night about midnight?
Gillespie? Yeah. You saw it.
I saw it.
Well, what are you gonna do about it?
I don't know.
I'll remember that. There was a time when I could have had you shot.
So we should take a minute to talk about that scene itself, because that at the time is considered a pivotal moment. I guess prior to that, you had never seen an African American man strike a white man in anger, and it's the hero doing it. There's no, he's not the villain.
I mean, I will say, I'll just say, that scene is, you think that scene's going in one direction, and there's a lot of twists and turns in that scene. And, it goes from, oh, the chief of police just wants to leave, having, had a very brief conversation, then then, Tibbs jumps in and goes, well, they know your opinions, and then it leads to him slapping him, he slaps back, then you're like, oh my God, is he about to get shot? It's that is one of the edge of your seat scenes that you're just wondering which direction this could go in.
And later on, Gillespie is talking to the mayor, and the mayor's like, your predecessor would have shot Tibbs on the spot.
And just claim self-defense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which again...
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's all my fault. Well, there's no point in ducking it, Bill. It's gonna be tough to keep you in your job now. Now, look here, Bill. I don't have to tell you how urgent it is to get Tibbs out of town.
No, I already told him to go.
All right. Now, Mr. Colbert is not going to be back till Thursday. You catch a guilty party by then, she's not going to hold it against us we had to send Tibbs home for his own good. But you got to do it, you hear?
I hear.
Bill? What's made you change your mind about Tibbs?
Who says I have?
The last chief we had, he just shot Tibbs 1 second after he slapped Endicott. Claimed self-defense.
There's, it would be, so Virgil is, this raises a legal question that we haven't discussed yet related to Terry stops and whatnot, but Virgil's a police officer, just outright smacks this guy in the middle of it's not a custodial interrogation.
It's not a custodial interrogation. He was slapped first. I think that this is not a Terry stop.
It's not a Terry stop, no, but it relates
I imagine if you strike someone, like no one would choose to. No prosecutor or police officer would choose to charge you. I mean, that's not true. I was going to say no one would ever choose to charge you. They shouldn't choose to charge you if you are striking someone back with equal force. Like, it would probably get, if there were charges brought up on that, it would get dropped pretty quickly.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's just an aspect of this that brings into question his jurisdiction and whatnot.
Yep. He's not sworn in as a police officer of that jurisdiction. Yeah, I forgot about that when I was going over my bit.
Yeah, he's essentially a private citizen. Yeah. And I hadn't thought about it. I hadn't thought about that particular scene either. Not for these purposes, anyway. So, let's go through our sort of final points. I like we've said, I've seen this movie about 20 times. I own a copy of this movie. It gets 9 justices from me in terms of quality. And in terms of the legal aspect, there are the jurisdictional questions, and I do think his civil rights were violated by Wood at the beginning, but it's kind of brushed aside by him being kind of sort of deputized. I think all his handling of the evidence is questionable. I don't know under the standards at the time, but certainly currently would be almost disqualifying. So I think on the law, I'm inclined to give like a 7 out of 9 justices.
That's fair. I'm happy to. I'll go next. Listen, the movie's fantastic. It's fantastic because of the actors. Yeah. It's fantastic because Poitier and Steiger are so good in the 2 main characters. And I will say, the minor characters are all very well acted. Yep. There isn't a sort of moment where you're like, ooh, that character shouldn't have done. They're all very well acted. But we sort of discussed when we started at the very start of this episode, it goes all over the place. And the writing could have been better. The directing's fantastic. The acting is fantastic. I'm going to go 8, and I'm sort of unhappy I'm saying 8 because I think it's a phenomenal movie. But I'm going to say 8 because there are some flaws. There's also some random plot flaws, how does Poitier know about the naked girl? There's a couple things that don't 100% add up, and I know you can say that of any movie. I know I said 9 of 9 for Jaws, even though some of that stuff makes no sense, but still, I'm going to go with 8 simply because of some of the flaws.
So, having seen the movie numerous times, there is a reason there's a reason Tibbs knows about the topless woman, or girl, I guess, because he's essentially told that when he's arrested for withholding evidence and put in the same cell with the other guy who's a suspect. And he's like, scraping under his fingernails and stuff, and talking to the guy, and the guy talks about like, somebody's got to tell her not to do that because she's always prancing around late at night with the windows open. And,
Well, this Dolores, she's real proud of what nature done for her, And, well, we was on a date up to Clark's Point, and she says, anyway, she asked me, she says, don't you think I got a classy bill? And I say, sure. And so she starts to show me. But no, I didn't do nothing wrong. I just didn't stop her from trying to prove a point. And this cop, Sam Wood, comes charging out of the bush and hauls me in.
He let you go, didn't he?
Told me not to mess with her no more. She lives over on 3rd, about a block from me, traipsing around the house and all together, and after dark with the lights on. Now, somebody sure ought to make her stop doing that.
I'm sticking with it's still
sure.
very good.
No, that's
Don't get me
perfectly
wrong.
fair.
It's still very good. In terms of the legal stuff, so like it's always hard to sort of like, obviously this is a little bit more legal nature than some of the shows you watch. It's always hard to be like, was it good on the legal side when like, yeah, some of the stuff was totally stuff that could have happened, but I guess it's like, was it accurate based on like what the law was, and like, were they doing things that were incorrect? So like, I think 7 out of 9 makes sense. Like, the jurisdictional part with Tibbs is the biggest sort of thing to me that would make it lower, because I just don't see a scenario where you bring a cop from Philly and just let him sort of go rogue. Like, it's one thing if he's helping them out in the back, like, he's always with the chief of police, or he's back at the police station sort of putting the pieces together. The fact that he starts actively going out and doing things, like, I just don't think that happens. And if it does, it seems improper to me. And maybe it might be legally okay in certain ways, but I just feel like if I was the chief of police and I asked this guy to help me, I don't think I would just want him going out on his own and just collecting evidence without me.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe it's just me. I don't know. I'm okay. I'm with Geoff. I think it's a 7 out of 9. It could go a little bit lower, but like, they get a lot of it seems very correct. And I truly think that it feels as though exactly that is how like a police station would operate in the 60s. Like, it felt like that was really what it was like. I mean, and again, we did talk about a lot of things of like what would happen with a future trial. Like, there are so many issues. That's not really what the movie's about. So I'm not going to ding the movie for that. If there were a sequel that went straight to the trial, that defense attorney has a lot to work with. And that would have been that'd be a fun sequel to have watched, but nevertheless. So I'll go with 7 out of 9. But yeah, I think that's about right.
So a Jerry Ryan. Okay.
Yeah, I'm between a 9 out of 9 or an 8 out of 9. I think I'm going to go with the 8 out of 9 for the quality of it. It's excellent. The acting's great. The directing's great. It probably could be a little bit tighter, and the only reason I'm leaning towards an 8 is like, if I had to describe the plot to you, like, there's so many twists that I lost track of it, and I genuinely don't remember like everything that happened. Which maybe that's a flaw of me as the ADD film watcher that I am now. But I'm gonna stick with the 8 out of 9, and I think we're all on board with the 7 out of 9. It's very realistic that it could happen. It's very realistic that it could happen. They do kind of gloss over what this guy's authority is, and then like, especially when this person who has no authority and the chief of police is disagreeing with what you're doing, like, I guess you would almost be arrested for interfering with the investigation at that point, is the only like real issue I can think of. But other than that, excellent movie. Happy I watched it. Good recommendation, Geoff.
On the sort of cross-jurisdictional question, have either of you seen Unbelievable?
Nope.
It's a mini series, or I guess it's just a series. It's 7 episodes. I don't know what counts as a mini series anymore. But it has some interesting intra-jurisdictional questions, and is just very compelling. So I want to add that to the list for a future episode.
Okay.
It is 7 episodes, and we'd probably have to go through the whole thing. And it's pretty dense. Anyway.
The Not So Grand Jury is sponsored by Morwa PLLC.
The opinions expressed in the Not So Grand Jury are those of the hosts themselves, and not of their respective employers.
The theme music for the Not So Grand Jury is from Gustav Holst's Jupiter and is in the public domain.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, if you want to suggest future movies, or even if you want to offer corrections, you can email us at notsograndjury@gmail.com or message us on any of our social media accounts.
The Not So Grand Jury is copyright 2024, all rights reserved.